Hi,
Good morning.
I had us up for an hour from now, but this time suits me just well.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, no, no.
You
Don't-
may have said 10 o'clock and I didn't notice.
Yeah, no, sorry about that. That's absolutely fine. Not a problem at all. I'm just going to move it in my calendar so I remember. But that's the reason I am late because I just got an email saying that you're in the room. So it's a bit
Ah,
of a
I'm glad they have that capability in the system.
yes, it is quite useful. I just have to save something here. How are you?
I'm well. I looked at Liquid immediately after talking last week, and I've just been reviewing it more extensively. And I understand now that it's perhaps its essence is 300 customizable keyboard shortcuts. But my question is it much more than that? Probably, I'm thinking, but
Well, can you elaborate? Are you saying that it needs a lot of keyboard shortcuts to learn?
yeah. Well, the one of the statements in the on the website was that there are 300 custom 300 keyboard shortcuts.
Ah, okay. Yeah, that's slightly different. So that goes for liquid. So let's say we come across the word XR and we want to look it up in Wikipedia, right?
Yeah.
So the way I would do that is this. And what I did there, which was really fast, was there's a liquid command here, but liquid works in all Mac OS applications. It's this application here, the one with the circular icon.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the idea is that you do a keyboard shortcut to take whatever text into it. Sorry, that was that. There is an issue with this Mac upgrade that if I'm in full screen, sometimes I have to be quick. Okay, so here it is. Here we have many hundreds of commands. So
Okay.
so the logic is if I want to search Google for this, then I have to do S, unless I use the mouse, of course, S for search and then G for Google.
Yeah.
Or references R, W for Wikipedia, convert it if it's a number, translate languages, copy, share, all of that stuff. It is, let's go to the website here. It is clear that there are quite a few keyboard shortcuts to effectively use author. I do accept that. But in my kind of defense, obviously, once you get to know them, it's not a problem. But if you control click, most of them are available in the menu. And uniquely, they have the keyboard shortcut shown next to them.
Yeah. That's very, that's wonderful.
Yeah, so hopefully that helps. And most of them are the first letter. Now, define concept, yes. Find, yes. Citation, because Command C is, of course, copy, that's taken. So that's one of those cases where we had to go a bit further in. And web link is Command K, but that's the standard Mac one.
Yeah.
And internal link then becomes a shift version of that.
No, I like the idea very much. It just takes time to learn, obviously, and I haven't taken that time. But what I was asking is really, is that the essence of Liquid, or is there much more capability to Liquid than that, which does have major speed implications once you've gone over the hurdle of learning the shortcuts? I
Oh,
love the idea that they're customizable.
yeah, actually, that's a good point. I'm writing a piece here for Adam, who's kind of part of our community. Um, and I'm just going to add liquid. I forgot about that. Yeah, that is really the point of liquid is, if I'm reading something and I want to cite it, then I can copy things, and then, well, hang on. That used to be a liquid thing, but we built it straight into Author, so here it adds all kinds of metadata. But yeah, liquid it's basically a quick lookup for me, because also it's under the bar here on top of the screen. So if if I'm watching a movie or something, I can instantly look that up too.
I find myself doing that more and more as I watch YouTube, wanting to check references, etc.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, so I'm glad you discovered the liquid tool as well. It's
Well, you had sent me the link at the end of our conversation last week.
yeah, but author and reader are really the ones that are highlighted, because liquid is hard to explain.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really just to get that kind of stuff done. But no, it's kind of fun. I'm responding to Adam's question of what values do we have? What do we want to see in virtual reality, augmented reality? And it's really, really hard, of course. So here I'm saying, I think reading and writing is fine right now, except for when editing and doing research writing. And doing the document itself highlights to me the thing that you go on about that's so important. After a while, this just turns into gray mush.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so we have to figure out how to do that. And I think one of the ways is this. So you're reading, let me see, Adam, and you do Command F. Oh, that's weird. We're doing some testing now. That is really odd. That's not what we want. Let me just export it without, we don't need to have table content. Yeah, so let's say we come across the word Adam, do Command F. Why are you saying no results? Clearly there's a result. The word was right there. Oh, I didn't even save the second word. Okay, well, that's an interesting current bug. Because a defined concept, I've defined these two just as a demonstration.
Yeah.
Because you can see them here. It worked literally 10 minutes ago when I was.
Well, I mean, obviously you're using a lot of subtitles, which I think is extremely helpful because they're road signs. I find myself basically starting to bold the topic sentences and concentrate topic sentences at the beginning of paragraphs, where they are often anyway. But just the fact that they're bolded and perhaps in slightly larger text and hopefully on a single line makes the visual attention drawn by the documents much clearer.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I experimented with here was putting the headings on the side. So, you can jump around, but you can instantly get into this mode by collapsing it. So what I just did now, I had bolds as headings, so I changed that. So it's much easier to see what's a bold and what's a heading.
Yeah. I like that capability once you learn it.
Yeah, so now I just did, let's see how this works. Yeah, so you see here editing and research has a different font, right?
Yeah.
So if I click on editing, it jumps to editing. It's an internal link. An external link has underline, but an internal link has the same font as the heading.
Okay, which makes the bold kind of ambiguous, but
It doesn't need to be bold. You're absolutely right. Let's get rid of the bold. That was before I did that. So here we can see now. So there we go. And editing. Okay, I think I may have destroyed it while doing that. So I'll go back and redo it. So there they are. You know, the idea is, I say here very clearly in bold that, where is it now? Less text is better.
Agreed.
And, you know, this is Command-Shift-B, grays everything that isn't a bold or a heading. Get rid of that spelling issue to help with that contrast. But that means, actually, I'm going to do... Yeah, there's nothing wrong with the find. This is a new build. It's by the team that did Liquid. It's not Jacob who did author and reader to begin with. So the views we have now are defined concepts. So it only shows Adam. He's the only defined concept in there.
Yeah.
And grayed out headings, so you have context. We can also do names. Those are also the only names in the document. Yeah, that's it really. And you can jump immediately to find concepts here, but that's weird that, oh, I know, this is actually a feature. Check this out. This is quite good. So if you look at the map, I have Future Text Lab. But you see Adam is blue. That means I double click, it shows all the occurrences of Adam in the document. But Future Text Lab is yellow. That means it's not in the document. Blue indicates link. Yellow indicates missing. So if I double click on that, it says it's not in the document. That's why it's not in the glossary.
Yeah.
Puts it all the way at the end here. Just so now it's used. So now if I export, where is it?
Have you ever tried taking notes in Author?
Yes, there is a feature in Author called Journal. So if I do Command J, these are my notes.
Okay.
So this goes back to the summer where I invented it, so to speak. It turns out to be only an author document that is hidden. But it means you have all the things like if you can do, you know, Command F to see all the occurrences of something. All of those things are available. And if I just keep writing, then it becomes notes. I don't use it as much as I should, which is interesting in itself.
You know, I recall that some word processing software, I'm not sure which, at one time had the ability in its outline capability to turn on and off different levels of text. I think that would be an incredibly valuable, I haven't been able to find it or find out, you know, what software it was in, but if one wants an overview of a document,
Yeah.
Just seeing the bold might be very useful. And then if you want to drill down to the next level of detail and support, being able to do that would be nice. And even further, if you're really interested, although just having bold text would kind of defeat the purpose of bold versus non-bold.
There's a related issue that we've been discussing in the group. I think that is, so basically saying not only this, but to hide everything that isn't bold, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That is something we should have in the reader particularly. And what I want is when you fold like this. Okay, so let's say for my own, let's say I'm writing a longer paper, and then I Command Shift H because that highlights for me. Right, and then whoops, that's not what I meant. So these are the sentences that for me really sums up that paragraph.
Yeah.
So if I now
that's an effective visually self-evident capability. That's wonderful.
Yeah, thanks. So when I now fold, it's there.
Okay, so in effect, it just wrote a summary of the document.
Yeah.
Using your own language, which is wonderful. I mean, I go back to Annie Murphy Paul's book, The Extended Mind, where I absolutely love the concept. I totally agree with it, but I kept, and I started reading it before you had mentioned it. I'd had it for a couple months.
Oh, really? Okay.
And I'm still frustrated that I can't really find the essence of her message, because it gets lost in her story linked to story, linked to story, linked to story.
I agree.
And I'd love to chat with her and see what thoughts she has about that problem. I mean, she obviously knows what she thinks is important internally, but I'd love as a reader to know what she thinks is important.
Yeah, that's interesting, because one thing you can do is obviously tag sections as being stories and then fact lists. I hate a lot of journalism for exactly that reason. All stories have to, let's say it's nuclear war starts. First paragraph with Bob, who usually works in town, couldn't go into it and then 10 sentences later because this town didn't exist.
Yeah.
Just, But thank you for reminding me of using this. Actually, yeah, this is actually quite useful. And this should ideally be encoded on the export, shouldn't it? So someone can have this as a view.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah.
And keeping the captions in along with the white outlined text gives a context that's very useful visually.
Yes. One thing about inventing is it's easy to forget what has been invented.
Yep.
And we've had a discussion in the group on using VR to have lots of monitors. And I came up with this idea that I thought was mine of it should be the application that makes a new display, not the computer. Because then you could imagine this would be maybe on my right. Maybe I have, where is it? Okay, I haven't got any now, but maybe on the left I have a table of contents, whatever. But can I show you this and talk over it? I think this is so pertinent to what you're talking about.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so I think this is a really big deal, both for XR and for plain. So when you're reading our book today, it's massive, right? And
Yeah.
a lot of the sections have a huge amount of text. So for instance here, I'm reading along, it's all fine. Then I get to Andreas and I decide I don't want to read Andreas. So many clicks to get past it, and every single click I have to check if it's a new section. That is a real cognitive overhead. So all I'm proposing, and I've got some guys trying to implement it now, is that in the same way that you do arrow key right to go to the next page,
Yeah.
imagine when you want to go to the next heading level, you do arrow key down. So I should, yeah, okay, so here I'm doing that. So here I've mocked that up. So we open this document and I go arrow key down all the time, not right. So I jump from the forward by Vint to welcome by me because it's next page anyway. So in the beginning, because there's quite a few headings, there's not much difference. But then I get to,
I love that.
Thank
I
you.
mean, it's a way of quick scanning, like flipping through the pages of a book when you first get the book.
Yeah, exactly.
And it retains the value of the electronic version versus the paper version.
Yeah, no, exactly. The idea is that when we go through, hang on, this thing here, our beautiful actual book, this is our table of contents. It's ridiculous. It doesn't communicate anything unless you know who these people are.
Yeah.
Look how pathetic our headings are, including my own. Okay, maybe Eduardo space art. Okay, that's good. But, a journal guest presentation says nothing. Information murals hints at something slightly, but if it could be just a pretty mural. It doesn't show it's Bob's deep thinking, right? Et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Hence the point of showing two-page spread, because if you can't judge it here, where can you judge it?
That's a capability which begins to make electronic documents easier to use and better to use, because it really takes full advantage of the quick span electronic capability. So I love the idea of, arrow key right, arrow key down, as you were saying.
Yeah, thank you. That's really, really good to hear, because it's been a bit of a stressful back and forth.
It would even be, it would be nice to use that relative to a transcription, for example, of a verbal presentation you've heard. I mean, after the Future of Text meetings on Monday and Friday, I would have 4 or 6 or 8 pages of notes, which are, I can't take notes fast enough, which is part of the reason I was asking about, have you ever used Author to take notes, or what were you using to transcribe the conversations before? Because ultimately, I'd love to have a transcribed version that I could review selectively.
I have a link here to something I saw today on that. It's a new piece of software. I'm going to send it to you. That is called Rewind. It records basically everything you do on your Mac. Boom, there's the tweet.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a very useful thing. I would love to work on that kind of timeline and note taking. It's really annoying because the note taking in Zoom is not bad, but it doesn't link up with the spoken bits, and we are not good at taking notes. Like Peter Wazilko, he's a great guy, but he sends so many links without explaining what they are.
Yeah.
It's just how in the world is that useful? That's almost spam. I've had several discussions on that topic. But yeah, that's we have talked about things like putting hashtags in there and all that kind of stuff, because I do put the chat logs up on our website every time. Sometimes I do transcripts of the meetings, but lately the meetings have been a little hotter than they should have been. So I don't want people to read our internal stuff. They should do the research if they want to see our arguments.
Mm-hmm. I still have in my mind a visual image of you jumping from chapter start to chapter start to chapter start to chapter start. That's a very powerful image which stays with me, and it's the impact of the visual that makes me remember how useful it is. I'd love to be able to do that. Right now, what I do when I get a new book, I flip through it, and then I see how long it is, and then I actually fold down the tabs. That's a cumbersome process, but that's how I most easily read. So I have a sense of how long each chapter is. But being able to do that electronically, would be even better. So the idea of jumping to the next chapter or the next heading, or the next major thought that the author has left in bold, or even the idea that I'd love to see a book where Annie Murphy Paul has highlighted what she thinks is the most important language, but much along the lines of what you're talking about, if somebody doesn't want that because it disturbs their internalization of the document, then they could turn it off. But at least it would be available to know what the author thinks is most important.
Yeah, I mean, this comes back to where I get so annoyed with Bob very often, because the frustration is not him, it's the frustration that what he highlights. Better writing, meaning not just better sentences, but better hierarchy, better categorization, better layouts, better metadata saying what's what is absolutely crucial. And I think that is something we fully accept in the community, but we also accept that we don't have the means to tell people to do it. So that's why we're going to have to provide the tools for those who want to, of course, but then also try to provide interactions with documents so that we can approximate that. So what we've looked at now is going from a manuscript to a published document. Of course, I use PDF these days. And one of the commands you saw, I'll just show it to you again. Obviously you got it, but if you do, there's an issue with the export, by the way, now, so it may not work because it's so massive. I'll just wait for it to be parsed. Because you see, all the defined concepts are up here, right? So you can actually jump to them like that, but let's do this. So for some reason, it has problems with the headings at this moment, but all these names are found through an Apple API in the document.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that the author didn't need to write them. So here's my thesis. So it's just an example of a kind of view. So I could imagine what you're saying is interesting. Imagine if we have a good summary system, but it summarizes every paragraph and leaves every paragraph. And it summarizes in the folded view, so you still have the headings. It doesn't try to summarize just the whole document. That would be interesting.
Well, it's as if sentences had a priority scheme where they range, say, from 1 to 3 or 1 to 5 in terms of priorities. I've tried to mock that idea up by reducing the size of text for the lower priorities. So, I mean, the concept is what's important should be visually self-evident. So priority 1 is the largest, priority 2 is less, priority 3 even less, priority 4 even less, and possibly in double columns. But that gets cumbersome to implement each time unless the system is built in with it.
Yeah. Yeah, there should be different ways of helping that process.
You know, it's funny because I've come up with some strong, perhaps irrational opinions about text. And one of the things I've found is that sentences which start at the left column, in my opinion, are easier to understand than sentences that start mid-paragraph and mid-line. So I'm making a conscious effort in emails or text to draft shorter sentences that hopefully work on one line or two lines, but most importantly, start at the left margin rather than midline. So I find myself using bullets much more frequently than most people. And I mean, I literally have a template on Microsoft Word, which is just one page of 9 numbers with indented paragraphs in a smaller size. And that's what I do my drafting in.
I'm just noting some of this down, as you can see. This is how I communicate with my developers, by the way. I write things in Jira.
In what?
In Jira. It's just some kind of project management software.
Okay.
Boom. So now I just do priority, feature. So then I just move them up and down. That is not a map issue. Yeah, writing bullet points is really important. That is a very good point, and a good point. There you go. You see, I've done it here for a list. I think people are a little bit worried about taking space, like from the old days. But if I do this, oh yeah, hang on. Yeah, let's find a page with a lot of texts. Let's open this page here. So it took that text on that page and it breaks it with a single break on command, double breaks on period, on comma, I mean. So this should be easier to do when reading a PDF. Because you write well, you write in a listy manner, but a lot of people quite simply don't. So you should be able to expand it like this.
Yeah. Expandability would be an incredibly powerful writing and reading, even more so, mechanism.
I'm just writing this down. Yeah.
I began to play devil's advocate with myself, thinking about Annie Paul's book. And I was saying, you know, my alternate ego was saying, yeah, it's nice to have bold statements and to understand what the primary message is, but that isn't necessarily consistent with the narrative storytelling approach, which is kind of universal in its use and popularity. So somehow there's got to be a way to combine the best of both worlds. I don't know what that is, but I have a respect for her approach and that approach. So I'm just trying to weigh the trade-offs and understand both sides of the issue. And maybe there are more than just two sides.
Yeah, yeah, no, I mean, there are different, just adding a reference here to this. Yeah, there also, hang on, you weren't saying that. So I just, the thing that I just showed you, it turns out it existed. So I had to, somebody had done it. So I just, this is what it is. They do it a bit more sophisticated.
Yeah.
So that's great. So what I did was I did Command E and I pasted in the name here as an endnote.
Mm-hmm.
So when I now export that, it should, yeah, see, here's an A, it's the first one. Why is that not working? These little issues are annoying. Yeah, that is supposed to just show the, like that. So it's the end node is not at the end, it's literally there.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, it's immediately accessible.
yeah, it's accessible, and the point of it is, you know, like you have a citation, you have it instantly accessible here. You don't have to go to the back of the document. You could click to open it, for instance. Here's my interview in Wired many years ago, where Doug actually mentioned something, which is nice. But anyway, the point is, you should be able to, you don't, a problem Doug had that he said to me many times is he's written stuff before, so he doesn't know what he should write in his new document. So to be able to write like code where you write, here's my statement on this, here's my statement on that, and then you compile that somehow into a document, that's what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, for instance, you know, this is what you saw earlier, defined concept Doug Engelbart, and the development of hypertext. So you should actually be able to read most of my thesis purely by clicking on this. It's the same.
Your thesis was about Engelbart's work?
No, my thesis was what became visual meta.
Okay.
It started with the research question you can see here. How can rich interaction be enabled through robustly embedded metadata? How can this be useful, and what are the barriers and opportunities for adoption? So those were the research questions, which of course are listed here. So I tested all kinds of stuff, and it went to you know, all kinds of background on scholarly communication, where citations came from, why we have different kinds of citations. And then there's been some discussion on concept maps, topic maps, all of that stuff, different ways to view things.
Yeah.
That went down to looking at infrastructures, PDF metadata, BibTeX, DOI, all these fun things. And then became the pre-invention of visual meta was all these kinds of graphs and charts, which are great fun. But if you don't have the metadata, if you don't know what things are, you can't do anything. So here's one where you see a keyword on the left pointing to whatever has it. You click on one, you can see who's written it. Fun stuff, could be useful. And here's one where here you have all the literature in the hypertext conference over the years. And here you've clicked on one, and you can see this document cites everything on the left, and everything on the right cites that document.
Yeah.
So this was great fun, but what I realized is it's impossible because there is no data available for it. So Mark Anderson, he took because he's very much embedded in the hypertext community, he made a database by manually doing this. So this actually works. Adam Wern coded it. So you can actually do this. He wanted something to do, and I showed him an old drawing, and he made it real.
Yeah.
But only because of the metadata. So here, so that became because.
So it was a static example, not a dynamic example?
Yeah, exactly. So here's the thing. What I realized was I realized a couple of things that was kind of interesting to me, and now I haven't bothered logging in, but I don't need to. So if I export citation, right, all the citation information is in this BibTeX.
Yeah.
So one of the early things I did was I made author parse that. So when I paste that BibTeX, it turns it into a full citation like this.
Mm-hmm.
So if I now export, here, I just put it like a random, okay. That didn't go correctly because so annoying. This one's not going to work. I have to redo it. And now we do it now. Just checking. Okay. See, here it is. The citation is here, and it's in the references.
So the metadata is working kind of via the whole association concept. If you copy the name, it takes along the associated metadata automatically.
In this context, it was even simpler. I copied this BibTeX, and when I pasted it, I'll delete this and show you. Instantly, it just reformats it. So all the stuff is here. Nothing's missing, right? And,
Yeah.
and there it goes. So that means that when I export, it automatically turns it into a reference. So you don't have to manually do that. So if I add another one,
Yeah.
now, then the numbering system will be kept up to date, as it were, right? So what I realized with that is, hang on a second, that's actually quite powerful. Why don't we just take that BibTeX and write it at the end of a document? That was the birth of Visual Meta.
Mm-hmm.
Because that means you now is exactly what you said. If I copy this text and go here, it pastes the text plus it cites me.
Yeah.
And it just struck me as being just a very simple thing. Now, what we've also added is DOI support. So you're familiar with DOI, right?
No, I was just asking myself, what does DOI stand for?
Document Object Identifier. So it's kind of a hybrid between a web link and a document. So if I now save this to the desktop, this has a, well, it might not actually. Oh, how annoying. Yeah, okay, well, I'll show it in a different way. So this document here, it has a DOI here. It's part of this URL. So if I now paste that, it goes online and finds all this stuff and then makes it from just that number.
Oh, wow.
The whole idea is to make it easier to cite. And then, of course, Visual Meta expanded to be much more. Here I've added a little bit of a history of barcodes, because in a way, it becomes a barcode, right? But the way I use the endnotes is putting in a link instead of having a whole citation for a link often. So here you can see how the citation flow works. If it's PDF with visual meta, that's how it goes. If it's a DOI, it goes to the server, becomes BibTeX, and that's how it goes. So here you can see the different levels of visual meta. We don't have any VR stuff natively there yet. So yeah, no, this chat was very useful because there is more in author regarding VR than I was thinking about.
You know, just using the term visual meta to me makes sense. And I find myself wishing that there were a visual content priority capability as well, you know, in terms of 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. But the idea of making it visual is something I find very attractive. Maybe that's the way I think or my architectural background. But, you know, the visual is a trigger for a hell of a lot of stuff. Because the visual, I think, remains in mind much longer and more deeply than paragraphs of text.
Yeah, I mean, a key reason for the term visual is just that it's not hidden in a data fork. You can actually see it.
Yeah. But it was the same idea, you know, it would be nice to have the capability of being able to turn on or off the author's visual priorities. You know, a good friend of mine in our book group of 8 guys, which has gotten together for some 30 plus years, one of his favorite ideas is, you know, this book should have been half as long as it is. And if it starts out as 300 pages, I'd like to read the 30-page version, you know, after reading the 3-page version. And so that would be an incredible capability, but it would require the author to do a lot of additional work, which authors aren't interested in doing, I would guess.
Or editors.
Well, but the editor knows the author and perhaps can read his or her mind reasonably well. But I actually think that if you're thinking in terms of information priorities, what you will write will significantly change. For example, I find a lot of authors begin sentences with using qualifiers. You know, if then, or, you know, 3 or 4 qualifiers come before the main statement in the sentence, rather than the main statement first with the qualifiers afterwards.
I agree. Give me just 1 second. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that. No, I absolutely agree that it is best when it comes from the author because they know exactly that. But another thing is DJs. You know, YouTube, when I work, I often listen to DJs because they go on for an hour rather than a short album or something. And I could imagine academic DJs in the sense that imagine if you read a certain kind of document and you're an expert in your field and you do the highlighting. I mean, this is, of course, social annotation, right?
Yeah.
But you then make that available in a way that I can cite the document in brackets with Jim's annotations.
Mhm.
So when someone goes to read that document, they can choose to open it and see only your annotations, maybe. I think that's really important that because one of the reasons that made me mad at the academic text system was reference managers. Because if you highlight text in a PDF using a reference manager, you cannot then in the future search your own documents for only text that is highlighted, which is crazy.
Mhm.
So highlighting only has a visual, not search or semantic component. But, you know, for instance, when I was getting into this, I knew a lot about hypertext from Doug and Ted, but I didn't know a lot of the academic. Mark was much better informed than me. I would love to read his highlighted documents.
Yeah. Let me mention a related event. Last night, I went over by invitation to a good friend's house, along with another friend's and his wife. So there were 5 of us, 2 wives and 3 of us. We walk together on Mondays and Thursdays, and therefore talk about things, especially politics, on Mondays and Thursday mornings. And the subject of the video presentation, the Zoom presentation we were watching last night, was the decline of democracy. It was held live at Stanford's Business School auditorium, and the professor, who is very well connected, Jim Steyer, whose brother ran for president, Tom Steyer, after making a fortune as an investment manager in San Francisco. Anyway, Jim Steyer, the professor, had invited 2 other Stanford professors who were highly regarded and experienced. One had been born in Poland, a woman, so she had a sense of Europe, and Europe was her specialty. Another Mike McFall had been the ambassador to Russia, in the early 20s, I think or in the early 2010s under Obama. And then there were 2 other outside contacts. One was Tom Friedman of the New York Times, and another was General Jim Mattis, who had been, Trump's director of defense. Anyway, the point is that it was a wonderful conversation and classmate, and there might have been 500 people in the auditorium live and maybe 500 or so listening. And my thought was, it's tragic that there weren't 1 million people listening rather than just 1,000. 1,000 is better than 100, which his first class was. And in a sense, by watching at a friend's, we didn't have to register for the class, but it was just, he's found them so relevant that it's been fun to talk about the subject of. But my point is, it's a lot like what you were talking about. We're wanting to hear other people's opinion and then dialogue about it, or hear what somebody took away from last night's presentation as opposed to myself. I was taking notes, trying to highlight the ideas of it. I didn't need the exact text, but I wanted to use key phrases to remind me of the conversation that I heard but couldn't otherwise remember. And somehow the efficiency and productivity of Zoom and note-taking and text authoring is going to come together in very powerful ways. I'm sure.
No, I completely agree with you, but I just saw it's really raining outside. I think I'm going to have to drive to pick up Emily and Edgar.
Okay, well, I've enjoyed the conversation. I don't think I have many questions left, but let me offer, I may be of some value to you as a guinea pig.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Relative to ideas. So don't hesitate to reach out if I can do that in the future.
Shall we? I'm very happy to schedule another call. I greatly appreciate your calls.
I don't think we need to do it now, but when you feel a need, let's do it.
Why don't we do Tuesday week, exactly the same time?
Okay, we'll do 9 o'clock on Tuesday, our time, which is 6 o'clock your time. No, 5 o'clock.
Hang on. This, yeah, whenever, yeah, 5 o'clock.
And does Britain shift to off of daylight savings time in next weekend?
No, we've already done so.
Okay, so the time difference right now is 8 or 9 hours.
It's 5 o'clock now for me.
Okay, and we shift to standard time, back to standard time. So spring forward, fall back.
So that would be earlier for you then, right?
Yeah. So what we'll say 5 o'clock Greenwich Mean Time, which is your time, I trust.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that is exactly the time it is now. That's later than we started, so that's cool. Okay, I've got to run. This is a horrible rainstorm. This was really, really useful. I've rediscovered a few things that I'm going to have to write down for Adam and to press into author. So thank you for guinea pigging.
We in California are jealous for your rainfall.
Yeah, I could imagine when it's dry in California, it's rough. Okay,
Take care.
bye for now. Bye.